Hi everybody, I'm Aeon. I am your interdimensional transstellar tour guide through the world of Jack the Space Dog. We left off last time with Victus is Aeon's friend. He is a sentient mushroom. He is Aeon's tech support and all-around invention gadget genius. Aeon will have ideas. Aeon's very good at building the things, but the technical aspect of the design and like what you need to actually make it work is Victus. That's his side of things. So they together have made a drive, and this drive is meant to fold space so that they can move from one part of the galaxy to another, because there's no way to do it conventionally, as anybody knows, to be able to do it and get there in any kind of reasonable time. So there do exist warp gates in this world, but they are stationary and you have to pay to use them, and that means you have to go somewhere first to get into that gate to jump to another gate, and they only go from one place to another place. So they've invented a drive that can go from any place to any place, and they know that it works, except we have no way to make an address for where we're going. So we know that it will get us to a place that we're going, but we don't know how to specify where we're going. So you'd need a map of all of existence, and we don't have that, though we did try to get one at one point. As we join Aeon being chased by the sect, Aeon and Victus are usually in contact when Aeon is traveling. He's sort of always up on comms. It requires two people to trigger the drive. Aeon can press the button, but Victus has to enter an address. You know, it's math, it's complex algorithms. And he and Victus argue back and forth for quite a while as Aeon's also trying to expertly pilot his ship so he doesn't get blown out into outer space. And finally, he yells to Victus, he's like, I'm gonna die if we don't use it, so worrying about whether or not it's going to kill me is pointless, because I'm certainly going to die right now if we don't use it. Victus does not want to put in an address. He chooses numbers that seem to make sense to him, but he can't figure out why. But something comes to him, and in the moment, which he thinks he's about to watch his best friend be blown to atoms, he has an inspiration. His brain works like a complicated algorithm anyway. He enters a long string of code and sends it to the ship. The big button turns green, and Aeon hits it and is folded into oblivion, at least as far as Victus can tell. Aeon can tell that it's working. He tells Victus, I'll see you soon, smiles, and blinks out of existence. There's two perspectives on this next part. There's Victus's perspective, which he waits for a bit, and then he starts to try to raise Aeon on their communication system. He gets no response. He tries for days, tries everything he can think of, tries hacking other networks that he's not really supposed to use, other interstellar communications networks that he's not supposed to use, just short of spacefaring homing pigeons. That's a joke. The point is, he tries everything for weeks and months, and he thinks that he essentially let Aeon talk him into agreeing to kill him. If that's true, it's better than being taken by the alien ship and processed into raw materials. But it doesn't make him feel any better about it. The other perspective is a little more exciting and a lot less sad. Aeon and Jack get an opportunity to feel themselves pulled apart atom by atom and then reassembled almost at the very same time. Next thing that Aeon hears and sees is every single warning light going off inside of his cockpit and the outside of his ship peeling away from the sort of modular separated area of control of the ship. So he's watching the thing peel away like a tornado ripping shingles off a house. It takes him a minute to get oriented, but he realizes that this is because he is still traveling at spacefaring speeds, but he is now somehow inside the atmosphere of a planet. So the friction of the atmosphere itself has destroyed his ship and is currently trying to rip its way through. His ship is disintegrating down to its last components. He doesn't have time to think about the implications of all that, but he pulls what you could think of as like the lifeboat. Essentially, it ejects and puts out sections of the ship to slow down the central module. So the module disconnects from everything else, which is melting all around him from the friction, and he's now, looks kind of like a half-clear ping pong ball with fins poking out that are spinning to slow him down like a reverse propeller. They create drag. This is to land, and then it's useless. It might be a source of battery power later. That's about it. this is where Aeon and Jack are. This is a situation they're in when they find themselves on the Atlas planet. They're falling. They have a little bit of ability to decide on their landing point. They can see with their scans of the ground, they can pick out non-natural structures. Structures that are built by someone, and if it's built by somebody, then there might be somebody there that can help them. There's only one structure that they can pick out on this hemisphere of the planet, and it appears to be a very large city in the middle of a large body of water. And this city is the city that's featured in Morning Coffee. This is the city that Aeon and Jack are sitting looking at while they're having a cup of coffee. Aeon doesn't know this as he's crashing, but I can tell you why it is that they're on this planet and why it is that Victus then cannot get a hold of them, even with their very good interstellar communication array that Victus also built. The reason he can't get a hold of them is since we didn't have an addressing system for where in existence you might want to go, the thing that had not been contemplated was not only do you need to make sure that you have a place for where, you need a where in the quantum sense. So which dimension, which slice of reality, not only is he displaced in distance, he's also displaced in reality. So he aims for the only city and structure that he can see on this planet and proceeds to have a controlled crash nearby. I can tell you, outside of what Aeon knows at the time, that the reason Victus cannot get a hold of him later, the reason Aeon has no records of this planet isn't because he's just so far away, though he is far away spatially, but you would have to assume that that meant that one dimension mapped directly onto another. So he is in a pocket dimension created by the Atlians. They moved their solar system into a pocket dimension to try and protect themselves from the sect. This is late stages in their struggle with the sect early on, a struggle that happened well before humanity was even conscious of itself. That gives you some idea of how long this struggle has been going on. That's why the city is still whole. That was the largest single thing they'd ever tried to slide into a pocket dimension. They'd moved suns, they'd moved all sorts of inanimate, high energy things, but they had never tried to move an entire solar system of living, populated planets, suns, and orbital bodies all at once into a tailor-made pocket dimension for it. Their thinking was give them time to breathe and come up with a new plan. They had a plan in the works, but they had not been able to implement it yet to try to minimize or contain or destroy the sect. In the process of doing this, they were supposed to get help from the Bumbles. They were supposed to show up and help them. The help that they needed was they were going to move their entire population off of all the populated planets within their small solar system out onto arc ships, with the idea that should something go wrong with the transfer process, at least everybody's not caught up in it and they won't all die. So they were all on massive arc ships, and these arc ships were supposed to hold them while they completed the process, which isn't like flip a switch and blip, everything's in another universe. It takes time. The Bumbles were supposed to show up and give sort of defensive aid to make sure that they weren't ambushed in the middle of doing this. The whole reason they have to do this is the sect knows where their home planet is. They do perceive the Atlas civilization as a threat. They were supposed to show up. They chose not to and went radio silent. They didn't show up because the sects didn't know where their home planet was and did not yet consider them to be an obstacle or a predator that needed to be neutralized. They chose not to show up because they were gambling on the idea that Atlas could handle their own problem. They just thought it'd be okay, and then they also wouldn't be exposed to the potential of being on the radar of the sect. That turns out to be the fulcrum, the downfall of the Atlians, because the sect does show up. They destroy their arcs. Their own technology has evolved from using suns to using one of the most energy-dense resources in the universe, black holes, or singularities. They obliterate almost, or at least enough of, the Atlas to make a race on the edge of extinction. Not enough individuals left to maintain a civilization. On top of that, the transfer was successful, so their whole solar system is blipped into a pocket dimension as they're destroyed outside of it. This is the real connection between the Bumbles and the Atlas. That's why their technology looks so similar. It's slightly different stylistically. The Atlas are all angles and hexagons. The Bumbles are primarily spheres, circles, spirals, that sort of thing. This is the link. They shared technology. The Bumbles came later, but they evolved in a sort of a symbiotic relationship late in the struggle with the sect. They've both successfully completed the transfer of their solar system into a pocket dimension that they created to keep it safe, but at the same time have now been destroyed by the very enemy that they're trying to keep it safe from. As far as they know, everybody was off planet, and there's no access now. The ships that would have provided access back to the planet were destroyed as well, along with almost all of the Ark ships. So you have two things that happen. On the one hand, you had one prince. They didn't quite have hierarchy like that, but you would think of him as a prince. One stayed behind with his ship on the planet. That's not important right now, but it's an important plot point in the story to remember for later. The rest of the survivors, who were on smaller ships, not on the Ark ships, they both don't have a planet and now don't have resources to continue this fight. Not having enough people, enough biodiversity to sustain a civilization dispersed through the galaxy to live out their lives and take shelter with some of the groups of Bumbles, but that's the effective end of their civilization. Their last gambit, which likely was a good solution, their last gambit to try to stave off their extinction at the hands of something they accidentally created fails. Or at least they think it failed. Plot point for later. So on that cliffhanger, we join back with Aeon as he is screaming through the atmosphere, having picked out a landing site, and is guiding a graceful for a crash landing onto the planet near an awe-inspiring structure that is in the middle of a large body of water. It appears to the eye to be made out of vast blocks of either marble or white limestone, some sort of white stone, except the height and scale of it could never be supported by stone. And even some of the angles and the ways in which it's held up, minerals just don't work that way. He crash lands outside of it, and he has a long trek to this city. This is the city, the view that we see in the painting Morning Coffee. This is the direction in which he walks up upon this city. It looks like a single building surrounded by ring structures. It's actually a vertically built city, and the ring structures are more sections of the city around the outside of it. It's both an energy conduit, a city, a shield structure, and a center for research. It has the repository of all their collected knowledge for their incredibly long-lived civilization. It is the Swiss Army knife of their culture. As their birth rate declined, this is the only city that's on their planet anymore. They, much like most empires, had begun to be parasites of their own environment, using up resources and using up land and so on. So they, a very long time ago, enacted an initiative to reverse this on their planet. They reversed their out-of-control population growth. They reversed their sprawling and spreading across the planet, and they brought it back to its, at least what they knew historically to be, its shape and form. They reduced their footprint down to this one city. The city extends underground, it extends above ground, it extends out in this ring. It's hard to even put into perspective the scale of the city, but think of a city and structure that comfortably houses billions. That would start to give you an idea of the size of the scale. And you have to remember, too, this is a race that has perfected the concept of a pocket space, a space separate from this dimension. You don't even necessarily need footprint to have space. You can have a footprint that is like the doors into the actual space. So now they have space that doesn't require land, space that doesn't require space within this universe. So you can reduce down the actual footprint of a thing down to a very small area while you still take up a planet's worth of pocketed spaces. And these pocketed spaces can even have environments. It doesn't have to be like a dark closet. It can be whatever you want to make of it. There's also a civilization that has mastered manipulating energy and matter, so you can create and destroy matter at will using these contained suns. Think of it as a super advanced forge. You can pull almost any material out, since all atoms began in the furnace of suns to begin with. This is where all of their technology extends from. It's where their manipulation of matter comes from. They use and reverse and funnel the gravitational pull of the suns outward. Very advanced city, very interesting place. This is what Aeon stumbles across, but when he walks into it, he can't tell any of this, because what it seems like is a very beautiful but very quiet tomb. There's nothing. All he sees is the white stone-looking surface. There's areas that seem like halls, there's areas that seem like meeting places, but it's all just this stone. It's like a blank slate. So he spends weeks wandering this place. He can't read the faint impressions that are on the walls that he believes are language. It seems like as he looks at it, it moves and changes, though it gives him a headache when he looks at it, because it's not changing like watching a screen or watching a physical object. It's like it never stays quite still, which is another plot point we'll explain later. The language thing is a whole rabbit hole that I can go down that I won't right now. Yes, I've lost my mind on this project. Yes, I've designed a language system, and it works both spatially changing and timeline changing as you look at it. So we won't even go into that at the moment. He has a lot of trouble figuring out how to navigate this place, but he's navigating it hoping to see something that he recognizes, or hoping to see something that would look to him like, oh, this is a factory, this is a scientific hub, this is fill in the blank. That's what he's hoping to find, is something like that. But a race sufficiently advanced will appear as though gods, just as technology sufficiently advanced will appear as magic. There's no way to try to get into the mind of these folks. Their ideas about things have no relation to our ideas about things. They've been around much too long. Aeon's an artist. He notices shapes and compositions and that sort of thing. When he gets out of his panic of wandering around a place that seems like a very beautiful but dead place, he starts to realize that shadows and light are landing in the wrong places for where the sun is in the sky. Sections of the wall that should be the shadow of this wall should make X shape on this wall over here. There's subtle differences. There's light where there shouldn't be light. And he starts to realize that this only happens along a certain path through the place. So he starts following these light and shadow that doesn't make sense, though it's just a little different, just enough different that you might not notice it. So he starts to follow these, and he comes upon a door that he had not found before. And the door lights up with a symbol. We'll get there next time.